Okay, guys, so now we're going to talk about forms of government and look into the history of democracy and find out what's the difference between a direct democracy, which was started by the ancient Athenians in Greece, and a republic or representative democracy, which was started by the Roman Republic in what is now Rome, Italy. So here's my beautiful wife, Dr. Metropolis. She's going to take you on a real quick tour of the Acropolis, and this is actually she's standing at where they would actually vote. It's a theater. It's the Acropolis theater on the side, is where the men who were citizens in ancient Greece, ancient Athens, would actually vote using direct democracy. And you can see the amphitheater, which is a half circle, and this is the first major theater amphitheater in the world. They still use it actually today for concerts.
Alright, welcome to the Acropolis, the highest point of the old city of Athens. If you look over to my shoulder, over my left shoulder, you'll see the Parthenon, which was dedicated to the goddess Athena, who is the goddess of Athens, which the city is named for. If you look over to the map for the Acropolis, they built a new one, which we'll see later. And if you look over, you will see the temple of Zeus in the back. In its heyday, it had over 100 columns, which are over 40 feet tall, all made with human. I don't know how they did it, but they did. If you look closely, you can see how big it actually really was.
Do you want us to point out the church?
Okay. Yes. If you look way into the hilltop, you'll see the Church of St. George, which is one of the oldest and most beautiful churches in all of Athens.
So this is a really exciting place for my wife and I to visit years ago in Athens. My family is actually from Athens, Greece, and you can see she's standing in the Acropolis Theater. And actually, they did not just vote there; they actually performed plays. So if you guys read about drama, I'm sure you did last year and this year in English, Greek tragedies. You'll a lot of those tragedies took place in the Acropolis on the side of. Well, this is the theater is actually on the side of the Acropolis, the highest point. Okay, so we're going to look at the Greek forms of government. A lot of these were started by Greece because the Greeks had many city states, and the city states didn't all have the same form of government. But we're going to focus in on democracy specifically because it's going to disappear. And it's actually going to come back because of America. Now, democracy is a government where the people or citizens rule. So the power comes from the people, and we'll get into these ideas much more philosophically and in depth later on. But right now, the power comes from the people. So right now we have democratic institutions. We have things where people actually vote on big decisions, and then we have more of a republic form of government. We're going to find out we don't mean Democrats or Republicans like the parties. We're talking about the actual their names are plays on they're playing on these terms, but we're going to talk about the difference of these types of democracies. Now, in a democracy, you have this idea of a citizen. A citizen is a person loyal to the government and who is entitled to protection by the government. Now, the idea of a citizen today is a little different than the Greeks. The ancient Greeks saw a citizen had to be you had to be 30 years of age and you had to be a male. But the idea was that anybody that was 30 and that was a male could actually be a citizen. And that was a groundbreaking idea because in 2,500 years ago, when democracy was invented, this is called direct democracy by the Athenians. Actually, most governments were, and I want you to think about this one. What kind of government do you think they had up until America? Most governments were monarchies. Monarchies, where kings and queens ruled from the power of God, or as in the case of the Egyptians, a pharaoh or pharaohs would rule, and she or he was considered a god. So all the powers came from a god. This power came from the people. Very different. Direct democracy is the citizens vote on political decisions directly. So in America, we do not have a direct democracy in our federal government. We vote for people that vote for us. That's an indirect democracy. But in ancient Greece, you could see them, they would actually vote on things like going to war. Like Athens would vote in their democracy to go to war with Sparta. Sparta would not vote. They were actually had two kings. They were a monarchy. So their kings and their leaders would decide if they went to war or not. In America today, we do not directly vote on war. We vote for people that we went for war. And we're going to talk about that form of government later. But in a direct democracy, we would vote on the very big issues. However, we're going to find out from day to day in ancient Greece, that's not how it worked. Okay, so we're not going to do that right now. Um, so Athens had a direct democracy. It's this idea of 1 to 1, one vote, one person. Now, the Council of 400 would make the everyday decisions. So, just to be clear, under Athenian democracy, people didn't just go vote on every single thing every single day. That was inefficient. However, the Council of 400 would meet daily and they would kind of vote on the main things that would have to happen daily. But big decisions were made by everyone. The assembly was made up of all male citizens, okay? So an assembly would vote on the proposals of the council. The council proposed something, and the assembly, which was all of us, all people, all males that were 30 and citizens, would vote. That's an important term, assembly, because when we get into Missouri government, we're going to learn that the Missouri government tends to be much more direct democracy than the federal government. Our Missouri state government's constitution is designed so that the people have more say in the government than the actual federal government. And we actually call our Congress in the state of Missouri the General Assembly. So that's in honor of this idea of direct democracy, not just a republic where people represent us. And you could see the famous picture, and that's actually in my classroom. And that's Plato and Socrates walking in the Agora, which is the marketplace, talking and philosophizing about what's going on in the world. And that's really important. We're going to read parts of Plato's Republic, which is probably one of the first books that really examine the power of democracy. Is it a great government? Because even democracy, maybe it's the best form of government, has a lot of problems. And we'll see these problems throughout this year, but we also see them every day in America. You see that there's different groups pushing and pulling for what they want. Not everybody gets what they want in a democracy, and sometimes decisions might not be made in the best interest of the people. So we have to talk about that. And that's some of the issues just to start with. Okay, this is how Greece would work. I want you to look at this as how they actually would vote.
Instituted the simple vote. A white pebble for yes, a black pebble for no. And with this elegant and simple idea, Cleisthenes instituted the rule of the people. A system of government which we now know as democracy.
So you can see that the ancient Athenians, they actually even thought about things in a very democratic way. Like it was confidential, and it was nobody knew how somebody was voting, which is the way we vote today. Remember, a white pebble was a yes and a black pebble was a no, and you would close your hand, stick it in the pot, drop it, so people didn't know how you voted. So even then, your vote was protected. It was sacred. Like today, you get behind a booth or some kind of divider, and nobody sees your vote, and you slide your vote into a box without anybody seeing it, so they can't intimidate or see your vote. Very important concepts that we actually feel we really get to vote the way we want without pressures from people around us. Now, this is the form of government. While direct democracy is more of the form of government we have in Missouri state government, the Roman form of government, the republic, is more of what we have in the United States government. We have a republic, and you can even see to the right. You're looking at the building. You have the dome. And the Romans invented the dome. I've been to the Pantheon, which is actually in Rome. It has a hole in the roof because it's a couple thousand years old. They didn't know how to put a lid on top of the Capitol building. But you could see, and then you see the pillars are actually Greek style, are Doric. So you could see there's very much influence of the Athenians and the Greeks and the Romans above all. Now, representative democracy, our republic, is one to many, meaning one person votes for many. So we vote our electives, elect our representatives and our senators, and they go to the House of Representatives and the Senate and they vote for us. So my representative right now is Ann Wagner, and our senators are Josh Hawley, and these guys represent us in the actual the Senate and the House of Representatives. If you live in District 1, you live in St. Louis City or North County, you have Lacey Clay as your representative, and that's going to change very soon. Now, in America, we have senators or representatives that make political decisions for us. So when we go to war, we don't vote for war. However, when these guys vote for the war, we can hire or fire them. So if you don't like the senator, every 6 years you can hire a different senator. If you don't like what the representative do, they always do 2 years. Like a representative only serves for 2 years, and then you can fire him every 2 years. You have to get rehired, and like Lacey Clay has been every 2 years for over 20 years. Now Cori Bush is going to take over, and it just took one election. She came close to him last time, and then she beat him this time. So that's going to quickly change. Okay, and when we talk about ancient Rome, the Romans tend to be much more divided in terms of political and social classes. So they had the Patricians that were the upper class, and they were the wealthy landowners that held all the highest positions of government. So this is where it gets a little complicated. The social class did play a big role in whether you're a senator. So usually it wasn't common people that were senators. It was the patricians, and we actually name the Senate after the Roman Senate in America. We have a Senate. We have a Senate in Missouri as well. And the senators were the wealthier citizens of Rome. And people would vote for the senator to represent them. Now, the plebeians were the common farmers, the regular people. Like all male Roman citizens, they could vote, but they couldn't hold important government positions. So basically, you had to be a wealthy patrician or wealthy. You had to come from a family of royalty in some ways, and be in a patrician social class to actually be in government. I don't know if you guys see any similarities or difference in America. There's been some argument that we have what's called elitism. Elitism is a theory that predominantly the Senate and the House of Representatives have been led by wealthy people. They tend to be, land is not as important anymore, maybe as just pure wealth, like money. But it tends to, some people would argue you have to have a lot of money to even think about running for government. But then there's maybe some other examples on the other side, like Abraham Lincoln was raised poor. He didn't have much money. Alexander Cortez was a bartender before she became a representative. So it's not necessarily all of them are patricians or wealthy by our standards, but I think you would have an argument either way that a lot of representatives and are very wealthy. They tend to have money.